Hey, it's Coach Anderson from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online, U.S. History from 1877 to present. Today we're going to pick up with Unit 12, and we're going to look at Lesson 8, the Women's Liberation Movement. And looking at the Women's Liberation Movement, it's just as it sounds. Now, what we're liberating women from, I don't know particularly, but the Women's Liberation Movement in my mind was about giving women the opportunity, of course, to make their own choices, to liberate them from the shackles of conformity that society, of course, had put upon them. So when we look at women's liberation, I think that's what they mean. The unit focus question, we have 4 of which, and as I always tell you, we're not going to answer unit focus questions at this time. We will answer them at the end of the unit. We have 4, identify and describe Kennedy and Johnson's domestic and foreign policy goals, trials, and accomplishments. Identify the origin, major players, strategies, and accomplishments of the modern civil rights movement. Describe the impact that the Vietnam War had on American life and politics, and what impact did the civil rights movement have on the other underserved and underrepresented groups in America. Vocabulary, just as we always tell you, go ahead and take out your journals, and in your journals write down these terms and define them as we go. And as we reach them, of course, and see them in the lesson, we'll try to address as many of them as we can. The lesson focus question, unlike unit focus questions, we have 2 of which are today. And what we'll do is we'll address each one of these at the end of the lesson. First one, what were the goals of the new women's movement? And 2, what successes and failures did the new women's movement uncover? Right now, what we'll do, of course, is look at the do now activities. So the journal topic says list jobs that you think men are the most qualified to complete and why you think that men are able to complete those jobs, possibly better than women. Okay, and considering that there are some jobs, of course, that men, may be a little bit more able, of course, to complete than women. When the ones that come to mind, of course, are the ones that require a great deal of lifting or a great deal of labor. That's not to say that women, of course, couldn't do some of those jobs, but you're going to find it's probably going to be a little bit more, advantageous for a man to complete a job, of course, that requires a great deal of heavy lifting. Jobs like being a bricklayer, of course, that's something that women could do, but it wouldn't be as easy, of course, for them to complete because of the physical limitations that they have, of course, in regard to looking at men. And the simple matter of the fact is, because of physiology, some jobs are more, or easier to be done by men, of course, than women. What we're going to do now is look at the birth of feminism. Now, the feminists, of course, would tell you that a woman should be able to do any job, of course, that a man can do, and she's physically able to do whatever job a man can do, and she should receive the same amount of pay that a man should do. And this is where the debate is going to come in. So when we look at the birth of feminism, post-World War II, the working women of America returned to the homes as wives and mothers. Starting in the 1960s, 1/3 of all working age women were in the workforce, and the numbers would have a continuous increase. The jobs, however, were lower paying jobs, but as women became more educated and skilled, they started to demand equal pay and treatment in the workforce. And the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Equal Pay Act of 1963 fulfilled that demand. The new modern woman was called a feminist because of her desire to be seen as an equal to man. And in terms of looking at the law, equality, of course, should be granted. In terms of looking at the workplace, equality should be granted. And in terms of looking at the military, whatever, they believe, of course, that equality, of course, should be granted. Betty Friedan and now. Betty Friedan is going to be one of the pioneers in the feminist movement. She writes a book called The Feminine Mystique, which examined the unfulfillment that women were experiencing post-World War II, having returned to the family from college or to the workforce. And once again, that term liberation, once again, is liberation from conformity, liberation from what had been accepted roles, and that's what we mean by the women's liberation movement. In 1962, Friedan and 30 other women and men formed the National Organization of Women to fight for career and educational opportunities for women. Gloria Steinem was one of his greatest champions and advocates as the founder of Ms. Magazine. Here you have a picture of Betty Friedan, the founder of NOW and the author of The Feminine Mystique, with the start of the women's liberation movement. Here you have a picture of Gloria Steinem, the creator of Ms. Magazine and the pioneer of women's liberation. Here you have Phyllis Schlafly. Now, Phyllis Schlafly, of course, goes in the opposite direction. She doesn't like the idea of women, of course, being given the same rights as men. And one of the biggest arguments that she makes is that if women are given the same equal rights as men, then women then would have to be subject to the draft and have to fight for, in terms of looking at military service. And she was saying that women would be crazy to give up that protection, so that they can do the jobs that their husbands, brothers, fathers, and grandfathers do. Successes and failures of the women's liberation movement. Equal Rights Amendment, failure, never got ratified. What it was supposed to do, of course, is guarantee equal rights, of course, for women. The Equal Pay Act did get passed, the Title IX, which gives women the opportunity, of course, to participate in the same, in schools and have the same, and young girls have the same access, of course, as young men. Griswold v. Connecticut, what it does, of course, is upholds the idea of privacy and where the use of birth control is not going to be outlawed. Roe v. Wade, of course, guarantees women, of course, the right to an abortion. Planned Parenthood versus Casey, state restrictions are placed on abortion. So even though we have Roe v. Wade in '73 that gives women or guarantees a woman the right to vote, there in Planned Parenthood versus Casey, the Supreme Court rules that states can place restrictions on abortion. Women today have higher college enrollment numbers than men, and 40% of the lawyers and doctors since the year 2000 are women, but the wage gap still exists. So even though we have more lawyers, more doctors, of course, they're women, they still don't make as much money as their male counterparts. More employers today offer more benefits to women to make work more compatible for their families and lives like maternity leave and on-site daycare, et cetera. So there has been a concerted effort in the country to make sure that women are given the opportunity to pursue their dreams and their aspirations in the work arena. All right, what we're going to do is take a few minutes and we're going to look at a video, of course, on the Equal Rights Amendment, and then in terms of what it guaranteed and why it didn't, why it didn't pass, why it wasn't ratified. What we want you to do, of course, is to navigate to the lesson description where you can click on the link, access the video and the activities, view the video, complete the activity, turn your work into a PDF file, and turn to your teacher, of course, to be graded. Good luck and do your best, and at this time, go ahead and navigate there. You should have had enough time that you were able to go through, of course, and look at the Equal Rights Amendment. And one of the things that you should have been able to find when you looked at the Equal Rights Amendment, there was a groundswell of support early on for the Equal Rights Amendment. We're going to find that as the movement kind of goes on, we're going to find that support, of course, and then the impact of Phyllis Schlafly and conservative women like her are going to take some steam out of the Equal Rights Movement, and of course, and it will not be ratified by the states. All right, lesson focus question. We had 2 lesson focus questions for lesson number 8. It says, what were the goals of the New Women's Movement, and what successes and failures did the New Women's Movement uncover? Well, let's look at the first one. What were the goals of the New Women's Movement? The Women's Liberation Movement at its core was to provide women with fulfillment by affording them access to opportunities outside the home. Women would be allowed to attend universities to get advanced college degrees, gain access to jobs with equal pay, and gain control of their bodies through access to birth control and abortions. What successes and failures did the New Women's Movement uncover? Successes include the Civil Rights Act of '64, Title VII, the Equal Pay Act of 1963, Title IX, Roe v. Wade, Griswold v. Connecticut, and the creation of the National Organization for Women. All things that, of course, that positively impacted women. The failure, the primary failures were a result was the failure to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment and the limitations placed on Roe by Planned Parenthood versus Casey of 1992. Well, we hope you were able to gain some idea about what the Women's Liberation Movement was about, or the Women's Lib Movement, as it's sometimes called. So what we wanted to do, of course, is give you an overview of some of the things that women, did, of course, to kind of galvanize support among, sisters to see about getting some of these things done. And to some degree, they have some success, but the Equal Rights Amendment is going to be a little bit of a blow. And we're going to find that today, one of the hot button issues, of course, has been Roe, protected for many, many years in the country, but we're going to find that it's come under attack, and it's becoming one of those galvanizing forces to kind of get women back, to talking and trying to create protections, of course, for themselves or what they see as their future. All right. This is Coach Anderson from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online U.S. History from 1877 to present. And do what we always tell you. Do your own research, draw your own conclusions. And with that, we'll see you next time.